Welcome to the 2350 Effect. The 2350 Effect starts now.
Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday and welcome to the 2350 Effect. I'm the co-host, the collaborator of the 2350 Effect. I am Damian Kinsey, and I'm also the co-founder of the 2350 Network, the Virtual Wellness Experience, and the co-collaborator in the Work-Life Balance Summit, Professional Work-Life Balance Summit, if I say that as well. Those people are joining us, and if you haven't noticed that we are an hour earlier, which we usually used to start at 8 o'clock, but originally we started at 7, and we're now back at 7. And I use the terminology we because I'm always joined by my co-host, collaborating and partner, Dr. Tanya Farron. But this week she's the guest on the show, and we're going to have a conversation about how to keep your identity while raising the well-adjusted child. Thank you, Jackie, for joining us, and those people who are joining us. Lisa, thank you for joining as well. Those people out there, continue to put the information in so we can thank you for joining us as well. We are having a jam-packed conversation. It will definitely be one that you want to stay the whole entire time for as well. Without further ado, our guest, our only guest / collaborator, is a mom, a principal, educator, human being, good person, provides herself in wellness, and also has written more than 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books. Without further ado, the co-host of the 2350 Effect and the guest this week is Dr. Tanya Farron. Dr. Farron, thank you and welcome to your show.
Well, thanks so much. This is just going to be such fun. I appreciate you thinking of this topic. When Damian and I sit together and decide what our topics are, he threw out a suggestion, and I said, well, that'll be fun. Let's talk about some things like that. Thanks so much.
Yes, and I definitely wanted to have this conversation around parenting and identity, and being in a situation when you're raising kids and you're losing your identity. You started off as a human being and a person, and then all of a sudden, a lot of times, a lot of parents get not lost, get put into the identity that they're just a parent, and there's so many complex things to being a parent besides just being a parent. You're an individual first.
Absolutely.
And as always, we'll start off with our So we start off with Laugh Cortex every week, and this level of Laugh Cortex, I want to kind of throw it out as a question. What is that thing that you did this week that stood out for you, that you did for you? And those people in the audience, throw those things out that you had for the week that you did for yourself.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start while people are thinking about what they did for themselves this week. Please drop that in the chat. Thank you for joining us tonight. I will say for myself, we kind of had a weekend where my husband and we had different options of what we could do, go here, there together, separate, and go our own routes this weekend. And I chose to do what, I needed for me. And that was, be home here and stay home this weekend. He's, doing his thing. And, I love to do some crafts during the holiday time. So I've been working on some bracelets. And so I spent some time, and that was my goal today, was to just play with my bracelet making stuff and just have time to just do that and just be, and also be with my kids. Well, one of them went on one with my husband. The other one's home, and I was able to watch them coach, and that's what I wanted to do this weekend. And so sometimes taking that moment just that you want to do and allowing yourself that time. So that was one of the things that I did for myself. But I also want to say, you guys, the cutest laugh caller text. You know me, I'm always going to show you something. I'm always going to pull something up that was just great. It was super fun. But my granddogs, my daughter put her Christmas tree up, and a couple of my granddogs in the picture already. So super cute. That's Lizzie and Nellie. Yeah. So that was one of my fun texts. I also got pictures of Annika's dogs. Also, they're super cute too, but they're just sleeping in theirs. They're not by a tree. How about you, Damien? What'd you do for yourself and your laugh caller text?
Well, my laugh call text this week was, as we were talking earlier before we started, I had a restful reset. Tina, one of our 2350 members, and she did the virtual wellness experience one year, and her topic was having a restful reset. I kind of had my restful reset today. I normally don't really sleep during the day, but I use this as an opportunity to have a restful reset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And sometimes giving ourselves that permission is so important, right? To say, I'm not just lounging around, but I'm going to give myself a restful reset and give myself permission to do that. So important to do.
Nice. Thank you so much for that. And speaking of permission, let's go into it, because you're the guest this week.
Okay.
All right. So now, your book is called Raising a Well-Adjusted Child, A Parent's Manual.
Mm-hmm.
What is raising a well-adjusted child? What does that really mean to you? And why did you come up with that topic?
I love that. Well, my team and I, when we were creating this book, we were bouncing around the idea of the topic, and I really just sort of described what the book is about. And it's about teaching your kids, life skills that they need that surround, consequences, discipline, boundaries, family, faith, relationships, friendships, safety, education. And so when we talked about that, I really wanted them to be well-rounded, right? I wanted our kids to be able to handle what life throws at them. And so we talked about the words being well-adjusted. So a lot of people think that well-adjusted means perfect. Well-adjusted does not mean perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect person, a perfect child. And so well-adjusted means they're able to handle what life throws at them. They have strategies, they have tools, they're able to handle what life throws at them.
I like that answer, being able to handle what life throws at them, well-adjusted. So it makes sense. Like you're adjusting and adapting to whatever's going on and what life brings you, because life isn't perfect. So this is the book, Raising a Well-Adjusted Child. And the thing about this book is, those people don't know, how many books have you written?
I've written nine different books.
You've written 9 books.
Mm-hmm.
You have this. You also help support in magazines too as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you have 9 books. And this is not your first book.
No.
So you wrote a cookbook first,
yes.
Right? Correct?
I did.
So you wrote that cookbook. And I've seen the Ani Pasta on TikTok. Mm-hmm. I've seen how many impressions, likes. It kind of went viral.
Yeah.
Why not just keep writing cookbooks? What made you decide to say, I'm going to write this book as a second book? And,
right. I was actually writing both of them simultaneously, if you want to know the truth. So this book actually was written about 5 years prior to actually writing it. I came home one day from work and I jotted all of these ideas down in a notebook and I shoved them in a desk drawer. And during COVID, I had time. While COVID was a really hard time for us as a world, it did allot me the time to write in these books. And then this book evolved while I was in the process of writing this book. Now, anybody that's written any kind of a cookbook knows that like the layout and pages of a cookbook is a little bit harder to do than a traditional just book. Your layout and design is different. So this took us about the same amount of time as it took us to put this together. But yeah, but why not keep doing this? I have more of these coming. So there's more in my mind that I want to do. It's just sitting down and doing them all. But yeah.
So why was this so important to you to say, hey, I have to get this out?
Yes.
Because you wrote the notes down, you brainstormed, and you put it in the drawer. Why did it come out of the drawer?
Right. Well, because I knew that the things that were in this book, first of all, they're timeless. Okay. So I've been in education for, a long time, almost 30 years. And the tips and strategies that I share in this book are timeless. They are the same tips and strategies, regardless of the happenings in the world, technology advancements, things like that are tried and true. And these are the strategies and tips I was giving to parents forever that were successful for them. So I was taking the most successful strategies that I was helping parents with every day and putting them together in a book for everyone. I kept thinking to myself when I would talk to parents, like, I really wish there was a book or a manual or something that I could hand parents and say, go through this first and then work through these things. And then let's see what happens at that point in time. And so to me, these were the basics of parenting skills that were successful for parents. And so I feel strongly about getting this in the hands of parents and talking to parents about this. So it has been really great for a lot of families. Mm-hmm.
That's the other part of the book, is the parents manual.
Mm-hmm.
So give parents an opportunity. And I'm glad you did that and decided to write the book and pull it from out of the drawer and kind of put it to print, because it's going through it and reading a book, it's so many things that are in it. And when I was planning and we were talking about what to do, and I reached out to her, I said, why don't we just talk about your book, and how you keeping your identity, as a parent, you being a parent and you're writing a cookbook and you're working with your team and you're writing a parent book, and that's something you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
It could be so easy for you to say, you know what, I'm too busy with my kids and my family, and definitely during the pandemic, and say, you know what, I'm not going to write a book, why did you say, you know what, it's time now?
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to. I've wanted to write a book. I always wanted to do that. And so I started writing it and I incorporated my family. And so that, we worked on these projects together. So if you go to Creative Living Ideas website, you'll see pictures of my daughters on there. They're on my creative team. They're on the editing team, design team with us. And we do all of these things together with this book. And so they were part of it, and so it was easy to do that. And they were excited about it. They wanted to be a part of it. And, they've lived with me as a principal and a teacher. And so they know that these things are helpful, for them. And so again, it's a really easy read though. I go in and talk about my successes and failures as a parent. This doesn't mean that I am a perfect parent, nor does it mean that my children are perfect. We've all made our share of mistakes as a family. And so I think that's important for people to know too. But these are the strategies that are successful, that were successful for me, that are successful for other parents. Yeah.
I like that. So you're a parent. First, Tanya started as Tanya. You ended up being a parent. How do you maintain your identity of yourself? Mm-hmm. How do you continue to maintain Tanya?
Yeah. So, now it's kind of easy for the fact that I'm an empty nester for the most part, so I feel like I have a lot of time. But for those parents that are in the trenches, that are in the moment of a large family at home and lots of bodies. And I it's funny because it seems like life gets very busy when you have kids, they have friends over, and you're hustling and bustling and going places. So there's a lot of activity. So you can kind of lose yourself in that piece. And it's hard. I've always said it was easier for me as a parent to go to work. Like that was easy for me. I was able to keep that identity some by going into work. And I give kudos to parents that are at home. Like it's got to be very challenging because you're immersed in the home when they're gone, when they're there, that is hard for you to kind of branch out and have that own identity. So I'd love to hear from other people who are at home parents that how do they find their identity? But for me, I was able to do that. I worked really closely with my family, and communication is very important, and talking to your spouse and talking to your children. I was thinking about this while I was getting ready today about this conversation and some of the things that we did a little bit differently. When I was a teacher, I was going to school to be a principal. I was a teacher. I had kids at home. I was married. And I needed their support and help. And so some of the things like, how do I work on me? Like, how do I have physical activity? How do I go for my walk every day? How do I work out every day to take care of my body? And to have a conversation with my husband about that. When is the time that I can carve this out for myself? Talk to my kids about that. And it was able to work out. I mean, it's 30 minutes to an hour, right? 5 times a week. You should be able to have that conversation and figure that out. And it's nice when you have the whole team, your whole family on board with you to help you support that. Sundays oftentimes were times that I had to do homework or I was grading papers. And sometimes my family would help support me with that. If I was grading multiple choice 5 questions, here, you get this test, you get this test, we sat around the kitchen table. Because if we did this all together and talked through some, papers, then we could get it done and we would have more family time together, And so I had a lot of support, but talked about it and asked for help, asked for communication. There could be just a whole show even just on that, learning how to ask others for help. I talk about this several different times. There was a time when my mom, I always had, as a teacher, I was a lead teacher as well. And I always had a meeting Friday mornings at 7:15 in the morning, which was really hard to get to. I lived 25 minutes from work. And I would have to go and drop my kids off at childcare or get them wherever they needed to go for school. And then I'd have to be at work by 7:15, which meant I had to be at work by like 7:05 to get into my classroom, to get my notebooks, to get down to the meeting, right? And so I was leaving the house at 6:30. And my mom finally one day said, you know what, how about on Fridays, I just come to your house. I don't have to be at work till 9. I can get your kids ready and get them where they need to be. And you can go just walk out the door at 6:30. And I was like, that is the greatest gift you could ever give me. You don't have to buy me another gift ever in your life, ever, nothing. And I remember that being so profound. Now I could have said, oh, no, I can do it all. But I accepted the help and it was amazing. Amazing.
And I like that because you talk about in the book about asking for help, like a big proponent of it, and it's so important. Asking for help is one thing, and another thing is you talked about receiving help and accepting help. Sometimes we often get lost in our own bubble and space where we don't want to even accept help. Mm-hmm. Like people offering, I'm good, and you're really not good.
You're really not.
You keep living in the I'm good loop. Yep. And it's not real to the point where you start believing it. And then when you decompress, you're so exhausted, and especially probably you being a parent, getting that level of help and saying, I just need to be able to get to my meeting. I can leave at 6. And your mom saying I can help. It's so important, Yeah. She probably paid it forward too. She probably was like, you know what? I know here's where my daughter needs help because I've been through it.
Yes.
Here. It's where I can insert myself. I love that.
Right. I do too. Thank you.
But you also extend further than that. You try to make sure that meetings are at certain times so you don't have to deal with that because you're empathetic, because you know how it feels to be in a situation where you're rushing and the first thing you do, you're walking into a meeting.
Well, you're right. So moving forward as an administrator, Damien's probably heard this from me several times. I do set a lot of boundaries around my meetings, the times I meet, the days I meet, when I meet. And that's really important for me to preserve my identity, my family time, my friendship time. And so I do that now as a leader. I really refrain from having very early morning meetings for my staff because I know they have families and lives and things to get done. And we can do this meeting either in an email or we can do it another way, another time. Then let's schedule that. It's important to kind of take that bird's eye view over what does your week look like? What can you manage? What can you handle? What are the times that you're required? A lot of people think that they see a lot of Damien and I together or in different, both of us on social media is my point. And they'll say like, gosh, do you ever stop? Yes, I do. We do this show Sunday, we meet Monday. That is it. You know what I mean? For most of the week. And so we try to get everything organized in 2 days. And then we have the rest of the time to have the rest of our lives. And that's super important to do.
I like that. And you said something that's important that goes into my next question. Thank you, Sharon, for chiming in and responding. Anybody who has a question for Dr. Farron about her book and being able to keep her identity while raising her children, please chime in. Dr. Bacart, thank you for joining us as well. You talk about boundaries. I know during the summer you talked about boundaries during the summer. You speak on your book about boundaries and the importance of boundary, and you actually outline scenarios in your book and situation in the book. And let me see exactly. I think it's page 26, if I'm not mistaken. You talk about the situation, and this is great for like parents and identity. Your child ends up in your bed at night.
Yeah.
And you talk about having a clear conversation and making sure that your kid is not in your bed. Tell us the importance of that boundary, because there's a lot of parents out there who cannot draw that boundary. They feel really bad when they take their kid out of the bed because the kid wants to feel safe and they want to feel safe as a parent. Tell us about that.
Well, there are, I think explaining that boundary or having that boundary yourself as the adult, as the parent is important, because let's think of some things. You need sleep. As a parent, we need to sleep. I can't sleep with her foot on my face or it in my back or, flopping on top of me. Like I need space. I need sleep. I might want to be intimate with my husband. I don't need a child in the bed. Like there are so many things. Like if we want to have a successful marriage, I can't have these children in my bed. Like there are things like that really are important. Plus, are we building on the independence of our child? Is our child becoming independent? Are we finding ways for them to self-soothe themselves? Are we finding ways for them to comfort themselves? How do we establish that? So the first thing I think is important for us to explain to them, I need you to go into your space. This is your space. This is my space. I need my sleep. You need yours. Now, what are ways that you can keep them safe? Those are other conversations that will surround whatever the needs of that child are. Now, my kids, thunderstorm, something, they barged into my room. I would make them a pallet on the floor. This is what worked for my husband and I. They could be in the room during a scary moment like that, and we'd make them a pallet. They felt safe in that situation. But most nights it was bringing them back to their bed, tucking them in, getting them comfortable, and a few nights of kind of sleeplessness, but establishing that boundary. And there's so many little boundaries. People think boundaries are negative, but they are not. They're for preserving ourselves. They're for helping grow that well-adjusted child. We can't have children that are fearful of sleep. Right?
Yes, that's so important. And it also sets those habits probably like going forward. Like you need your own sleep, rest time, and kind of decompress. Like you talk about digital space. You talk about detaching from the devices in the book. Mm-hmm. But one thing I wanted to continue to talk about with boundaries is that I had an aunt who said this, and it always stuck out to me. My birth certificate doesn't say "Mom, can I get?"
Right.
And I never forgot her saying. I never forgot her saying that. "Mom, can I get?" Is not on my birth certificate. And you talk in your book about coming in that first 10 minutes being about setting boundaries and just decompressing versus handling the whole "Mom, can I?"
Yeah.
Moments. Talk about that.
I mean, you feel like that, right? Like you have a drive home from work. Maybe you're finishing up the day in your head. You're thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. And you walk into the door and your kids bombard you and they're, Mama, will you take me? What, he hit me, this happened, or whatever the case might be. You might want to set that boundary of, you know what? I need 5 or 10 minutes. I want to go in the bedroom. I want to change my clothes. I might want to close my eyes for 5 minutes, and then at 4:45 or 5 o'clock, I will come back out and I will talk to you, and we'll have a conversation. And so, I think explaining to them that I have this moment to just decompress, and maybe talking to them like, you've been home since 2:30, you've had 2 hours to decompress. I need a little bit of time. And so while our kids might be toddlers, that might be harder. So for example, you may have to create a different boundary. And in my book, I talk about the early years, the elementary years, and the high school, teenage years. And so, there's questions at the back of the book. I always tell everyone that this book evolves with your child, because you're going to go back in and rewrite this. So if you're walking in the door with a toddler in one hand and a car seat in another, you're not going to very well be able to tell them that you're going to go lay down for 10 minutes, right? Until maybe your partner or person comes home or whatever may happen. So you might need to find another way to decompress or to handle that situation. So maybe it is you put them on the couch with a little snack and you give them, their tablet for a little bit of time or something like that. Put them with some toys, things like that. So you can do it. So you kind of have to change what those things are. But once you start building that as a young age, it then evolves with you. It's not a shock. They're not going to be shocked that mom needs some quiet time when she gets home. You can tell a toddler, we're going to have some quiet time. We're going to look at books right now. I want you to sit on the couch and look at books, set a timer, let them see that. I'm sure there's things on YouTube that you could even put on the TV screen that are timers, right? And count down for the kids. So there's lots of little things that you can do to preserve that time when you walk in the door.
I like that, setting the tone and the mood of, the quiet time. I think that's so important, creating that and putting that in space, because I can't tell you how many parents who I've talked to who talk about, I go to the bathroom and I just run the water and I gotta breathe because I just need a minute to myself. And, you're proactively saying, hey, when I walk through this door, look at the clock, whatever time it is, give me 10 minutes. And then mom, can I will go into full mom, can I mode.
Right. And then you're present for them. Now you're not snapping at them. You're not yelling at them. They know they've got their time. You've got your time. You're better ready to answer the questions,
I love that. It kind of like, the 2350 effect. The 10 minutes is the reverse for you.
Yeah.
Opening the door,
Yes.
I like that. And you said, you talked about that's exclusive from dinner and everything else, that time to just like, together.
Yeah. And let me tell you this too. So like and this is from just prior experience, my husband, he would drive from a job site that might be 40 minutes away by himself in a truck with no one talking to him. I probably picked the kids up from school or from the childcare provider, and I would be driving them and they would be talking to me the whole time. And so where's my decompression? When did that happen? And so we would tag out and I would say, listen, I need you, I need 10 minutes alone. You've had 30 and okay, great. But if you don't ask your spouse or your partner that, you're definitely not going to get it. And that's what I mean. These things evolve with time, right? So when they're little and who's doing the childcare providing, they may need that extra time. It may change when they go to school, change when they go to high school, things like that.
And I like that you said that, because it goes into our next question. Like, your husband has his 30 minutes to transition and, go from, worker, employee, boss, whatever it is, to, dad mode. And those transitions are so important. Can you talk about the importance of those transitions when you're keeping your identity, raising a kid, going from individual to the wife, then you go from parent, and then now it's time for the adjustment and transition to having an adult child. Because those are all different things and different learning curves.
Right. And yes. And so we have transitions in so many different ways of our lives and our day. Like, people don't really realize that those are all transitions, right? We're at home with our family, then we transition to work. So I turn into, work Tanya. During that time, I was back at mom Tanya. Now I'm work Tanya. And then, you transition to whether you are the employee, you're meeting with your boss. Like there's a lot of transitions, right? And so I think, recognizing that and knowing that those things take some time to regroup. So for example, I like to get into my computer and answer my emails before I really get into work time. So finding whatever that transition is for you that you need to make will help you transition into that next phase or that next spot a little bit better. For me, when I get home, transitioning from work Tanya to mom is definitely changing my clothes, taking my jewelry off, changing my clothes into my comfortable clothes. And that changes my mindset also, and then I'm able to think a little bit differently. And the same thing for my husband, he's working around loud vehicles, loud trucks, loud equipment all of the time. That quiet is kind of what he needs when he comes in. He wants it quieter, and so knowing what each other needs during transitions. Now, I also talk about transitions quite a bit of children. And that is something that, our children transition the same way, right? They transition from being our kid at home to going to the bus, to transitioning from the bus to going to the school. And there's different rules in all of those different places. At home, they're laying on the couch, shoes are off, right? They're in a relaxed mode. They get on the bus, they're following rules, they have assigned seats, specific behavior expectations. They transition to school. Now they're under the care of another adult that they're having to transition to. And there they have a different group of friends, a different spot to sit. So we're transitioning all day long in the things that we're doing. And so being able to think about those transitions in advance and, preempting what do we need for those transitions. So, I was at a hockey game just now with my adult children. That was important. My son-in-law was coaching. I was at the hockey game. I did not look like this at that hockey game. I had on a sweatshirt and leggings and tennis shoes, and my hair wasn't done and my face wasn't done, but I knew I had to transition to this. So I made sure I gave myself the time that I needed. I told my kids I was going to be able to be at the game until 5 p.m. And then I had to leave, which gave me enough time if I got into some type of traffic, get home, I could eat something, and then I could get myself ready and presentable to the way I need to be for work, Tanya.
You know what I like about how you described that and cleared it out? Like you're describing transitions, but you're also describing different identities and hats that you wear as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about being an adult parent to your children and being a supporter and a supporter of their extended family, which is their partner, which is your new family. Mm-hmm. And then you're taking space for your husband, taking space for yourself, and then doing your work thing. Mm-hmm. And I know on Wednesdays, you make sure that you have Wednesdays for your self-care and the things that you want to do, which is so important to keep your identity while raising your well-adjusted children, which are adults now.
Yes.
And parenting doesn't end because they're an adult. It still continues. So those transitions are so important, and you know what hat you have to wear, and you also describe what clothes you have to wear to it, costume or clothing, whatever people want to call it. So that's so important, and I love that you talked about that too. But that can be stressful. It can be so much going on to it. Like you talk about anxiety, depression. You talk about the signs of it, how to deal with it, some tips and whatnot. Why would you put that inside of a book?
Because
in this manual. Why? Because it's important. What made you think is like, you know what? I have to dedicate space for this. And put anxiety and depression. And what made you do that?
Because, our kids are struggling. They are suffering from anxiety and they are suffering from depression. And, there's, I would say, a large population of people, adults and children, that are really suffering from this. I talk to a lot of parents for kids who are in facilities at ages from elementary all the way to high school for depression, for anxiety, for suicide attempts, lots of mental health issues. And it's important that we talk about that. And it's important that parents are aware that, even if they think that their child is not suffering from any of those types of diagnoses or issues or mental health problems, they have a friend or someone they know that does. And even if they're not themselves dealing with it, it may be weighing on them for the people that are telling them these things. And it's important that we as parents are aware of that and we don't keep our head in the sand. We need to know that, and we need to talk to our kids, and we need to ask them questions and open the door. And there are so many parents that do not open the door, and their kids are suffering in silence, and they're telling people that they're suffering who always can't, that cannot always help them, like their friends. Their friends cannot always help them, but a trusted adult can. A school counselor, an uncle, a coach, someone who can help them get the help that they need. And so I have to have a lot of difficult conversations, and have had to for the last 15 years, with parents about the mental health of their kids, and that they need to talk to them, take them to pediatricians, things like that, to find out what do they need to do for next steps. And they're heartbreaking. Those are heartbreaking conversations for parents. They're, a lot of them are shocked. A lot of them are scared. A lot of them are worried, and they don't know where to go. And, I want that door to be open for kids and for parents. I also talk about going to a therapist. I know we're going to probably get into this conversation, but I am on a show with Dr. Qureshi. It's called Parenting in the Trenches. She is a licensed therapist. And, she treats, works with families and children as well. And I want people to know that it is okay to go to therapy. I want people to know that going to therapy and helping your kids and your family is really important. And my family is very open about talking that we have, as a family, seen a therapist and individually. And people think because you're the principal, you should know everything, but we don't. And so I think it's really important that the conversations happen about mental health, anxiety, depression. And I put some signs in there for you to look for. I put some advice in there, some tips in there, but it's the tip of the iceberg. These are some things, when a kid says, yes, when some kids say, I'm depressed today, I'm sad today. Okay, how can you fix that? But when you're looking at, like what Christy just said, depression can look so many different ways. When you're looking at people who are chronically having depressive episodes, those are things that you need to go talk to a doctor about, and or a therapist, and get some help beyond what I can do. So yeah.
I like that. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I like that you're talking about it from it, because the conversation doesn't need to happen. Like Sharon has said, this conversation doesn't need to happen. Depression does look different ways, like Christy says. Transition and making sure you have some boundaries to break the moments. Jackie, thanks for all putting those boundaries, keep us safe. Linda, and seeing the theme in the chat, which kind of goes into your book, when you're asking your kid to reflect on 5 positive things that happened during the day. Mm-hmm. And that's the way to help ease anxiety and depression. And you talk about the warning signs. And I think that as simple that it is, I think it's really difficult, and people get lost in the fact that if you sit your kid down and you have a conversation and say, can you give me 5 things? It gives you so many options of, okay, what's really going on in their day, without saying, oh, you're struggling, what's going on, or feeling the kid is being overwhelmed by being like interrogated or pressured into saying something. It's like, hey, just tell me 5 things going on today. It's kind of like how we do Laugh Call Text. It's kind of like, you know what, it's an opportunity to kind of unclog everything and have a conversation. It's a good check-in opportunity with your kid. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I started, doing this more often when my kids were teenagers-ish, like that preteen 10, 11, 12, started really looking into a little bit more about tell me about your day, and having those questions. I think the thing that from what you were saying just now, I want to make sure that people understand that no matter what age your kids are, you can start this right now. I want people to understand that right now. If you have a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, you have a 10-year-old, you can start this with them right now. So it's never too late. But this is something that has to happen readily. It has to happen on a regular basis. So if a principal or a teacher comes to you and says, Johnny said that he was thinking of hurting himself, or he's very depressed right now, and you ask them a few questions, that's not the last time you do it. This is something that is going to need to continue to happen. And so, one of my children, we talked about how they wanted to tell me, but they didn't know how to tell me how they were feeling when they were feeling sad. And so we discussed and talked about for our family that I would check in with them every week, and that I would approach them for sure and just say, aside from my normal, how are you? How is today? All of that. But go directly to them and say, is there anything that's on your mind? What is going on? Is there anything troubling you? And I may have to rephrase it 3 or 4 times before the door would be open for the person, my daughter, to tell me how she was feeling or what was happening at school. And it might seem very trivial to us. Maybe a friend had said something mean, or, somebody liked somebody else, or, whatever we thought might be trivial was very important in their world. And she needed to tell me about it. And she may cry, and then we may kind of come back around and feel better about it. And, having that door open and listening, and then maybe offering some suggestions or ways to handle it is really helpful to them. But just asking and checking and being with them. Our teenagers often want to just go in their bedroom, shut the doors. They want to push you out. They tell you they're fine, leave me alone. They can be challenging. It's not simple to love on a teenager sometimes, because they can push you away a lot. But I encourage parents to go in and be in their space, to sit with them, even sitting quietly. And when I talked about these positive things that happen in their life, sometimes kids can really get stuck in a negative connotation in their mind. They get very stuck in thinking only the negative things that have happened today that are bad. They forget that there's been great things that have happened all day, and teaching them how to look at the great things in life and the positive things in life are really, really helpful to them. And it really helps flip their mindset. It changes their brain. It gets them thinking differently instead of focusing on that. And so this is a trained activity that I learned from our therapist, that I've implemented myself personally, that I've implemented in my, raising my children, that I implement when I work with kids and talk to them, about things that are happening in their life. And so opening that door for conversation is crucial to relieving anxiety, to helping them with their depression, and love on your kid, give them a hug, let them sit close to you. Who do you want them to get affection from? A stranger? Do you want them to sit next to you and you put your arm around them and give them just a few squeezes, and say, it's going to be okay. You just hang with mom today, okay. Mom's got your back.
I love that you said that, and you're jumping ahead too. Because
Sorry.
we're gonna talk about that part too. And this is another tip that's in the book. Have your child write and repeat reflective affirmations. And that kind of gets away. That kind of lays the table and foundation to deal with the what you was leaning into talking about, which is that level of thank you, Linda, for sharing. Thank you, Sharon, for sharing, and everyone else. It kind of lays that level of when you're talking about, and towards the end of the book, when you're having the conversations around, people who are being like predator behavior with your kid, and people who are trying to infiltrate your kid and build those unhealthy relationships through media or social media or digital outlets, or even in person. Having those positive affirmations, giving those check-ins and putting those things in place is so crucial and important. What made you talk about that and discuss that and put those in place? Because there's so much, and you can Google some of the stuff and look on social media, some of the things that those challenges they have with kids that are unhealthy.
because they really happen. They happen every day, and in different realms and places. And you know, I've had to talk to parents about that. Those scenarios that have happened with their kids, and that is scary. And then we also try to promote. I've always tried to promote like awareness around cyberbullying, cyber safety for kids, things like that. And I've had local law enforcements, and you guys can look into that also. You can go to your local law enforcement and you can ask them who's in charge of their cyber crimes units, and they do training for parents. The one in my area in Missouri here, they actually have a time where you can go into and try the new apps that the kids are on. They have to give you iPads and you can check all of them. And they basically say anybody that is on any type of these games for kids, Minecraft, Roblox, all of those things, there's a predator there waiting, and they know that they are. And so talking to parents about that, I've had to learn about that, right? This is my job. This is what I do. I've got to help protect my students. And so I have to educate parents and teach them how to do that. And so just making sure that you're listening to your kids and you're asking them questions. Who are you playing that game with? Go into the room that they're gaming in, sit with them, ask them who they're playing. Who are they talking to? How do they know who they are? Read the chat. You're going to learn a lot. Are they in other chat rooms? Are they on Discord? What are they on? Where are they at? Who are they talking to? Who are they meeting on Google Meet? They are doing these things, even the best of the best of the best kids, because they're kids. And I think that's what we have to remember. Instead of putting this that my child is perfect and they never make a mistake or they don't do things that are tempting, they are. They've got somebody saying, a friend saying, hey, come meet us in this Google chat room. We're going to talk about blah, blah, blah. Let's get away from these adults over here. We're going to go talk. Well, you may know one of the people in there, but they may not know everybody, and so talking to them, ask those questions.
I like that you said that. It kind of reflects on my childhood as a person. Like you have conversations with some parents who are like, well, I don't play games. I don't play video games. I don't do this. I don't do that. I grew up, my father didn't play video games, but he started playing video games with me. Like one of my favorite video games is John Madden. It was a great opportunity to do relationship building through that and playing MLB baseball. So we had those opportunities to do that. But he also was, as an adult, knowing that he was keeping an eye on me. Mm-hmm. Yes. Back when I was growing up, it wasn't as sophisticated as it is now when you're doing like worldwide gaming. But right. If I'm engaged in an activity with him, he knows where I'm at. And I think the same thing when you were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, be inside these chats, be in these conversations, get on these video games with them, so you know what your kid is doing and what's going on, so you can be present, so you can be able to support and then help them navigate that. And I think that's what the whole raising a well-adjusted child is about, teaching them how to navigate adverse situations so they can be as prepared as possible.
Yes. Yeah, so we recently just did this where the cyber crimes unit came in and we had a parent there with both of her kids, which I thought was amazing. Like, awesome. Not just for her, but her children were there watching this with us and paying attention to it. And you need to know who your kids are hanging out with, where are they going, who are they talking to? And you know what? There's another really big word, no. Sometimes we just have to tell our kids no. And you're just not doing it. It's not a safe environment. It's not a safe game. It's not a safe place. It's not, no.
Or it's burning you out. You wrote in that, like about having 2 activities and it burns you out. Like, from one activity.
I did. It was burning me out as a mom. I was losing my mind. And I said, I have to say no to something. And I feel terribly guilty to tell my kids no. You want to give them the whole world, but you can't. And you know what? If you aren't the first person that's going to tell them no, somebody else is going to tell them no. And it's going to probably hurt a lot more. It's going to be down the road.
It'll be harder for them to digest no.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then they don't know any boundaries, right? If you always tell them yes, how do they learn boundaries? How do they learn reasoning? How are they learning conflict resolution and problem solving and being able to make better decisions based upon the information that you've given them? Like, There's so many reasons why no is a really, really good word. Preserve yourself, preserve your kids' safety, and you are responsible for them. At 16, 17, and 18, you can tell them no. They still live in your house. At 20, you can tell them no.
It is so good that you said that, because it continues that level and the theme of the conversation on identity. You know, parent time wants to do these activities because your child wants this and that, and you have two activities. But individual Tanya is getting burnt out and needs to say no, and you're only gonna have one activity this week.
Yeah.
And then you even talked about moving towards the level of they can have one activity outside school in the home.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Setting that boundary, you can have one activity, you can have one friend over, you can do, this one thing. And, one of the things that I talk about in the book that I talk about a lot that we really didn't talk about, I didn't really share yet. I'll make it brief, but one of the things that helped me keep my identity was, my kids were probably 8 and 10. And I said, Sundays are it. That's it. It's our day. Like, I'm not taking you anywhere. I want to do what I want to do. I love to cook. I would always we'd go to church. I'd say we did nothing, but we went to church. We went to the grocery store. We have to eat. So everybody went, and the kids still make fun of me. They're like, oh, remember I was in charge of the deli and you were in charge of this. And yeah, we did. We divided the grocery store up and everyone got what was on their list. And we came back and checked out, after church. And then I would make a really elaborate meal. And I think, my husband just felt like it was the greatest day of his life. And he was watching football or whatever sport, golf, and no one was bugging him. And I was cooking. He could smell all the good smells, and the kids were doing their thing. And I told them they could have whoever they wanted over, but it was beautiful. I'd make a dinner, or I'd prep it, and I'd go in the bedroom and I'd lay down and I'd light my diffuser and read some books, and I'd just relax, and then come out like 5 o'clock and finish the dinner. And you know what? Everyone loved Sunday, and I thought I was making this big, like big decision that no one was going to like it, but everybody ended up loving Sunday, and we still love Sunday like that. Even my kids that are out of the house, they've kind of created their Sunday to be like that at their home.
I like that. You already answered the question I was going to ask next, because does it set the table for being an adult and building those foundational stuff? And you did say that, and the importance about having that dinner. I used to watch the show Blue Bloods, and they used to always have the Sunday dinner.
My mom loved that show.
That gathering part, and it's about that family connection and being able to stop when everything is moving so fast. And I know Nick talked about it last week when she was on about the importance of dinner.
It is. It's so important to have that time with your family. And it doesn't mean that you have to make this big elaborate Sunday dinner. It just means that you're gathered around the table. And I talk about in the book, dinner time is an entire chapter of the book. And I talk about how, there was a time in our life where Thursday nights we met at the Mexican restaurant up the road at 8 p.m. because that's what time we could have dinner. And it was the only time during the week that we were all home, like we could get there at 8 p.m. And, the owner of the restaurant, he knew what we wanted. I mean, it was great. And we loved it. We met there as a family. One was coming from dance. One was coming from softball. I was probably coming from class, and we met there. But I talk about in that time, though, too, that is not the time that we scold our children. That is not the time that we're on our devices. That is the time where you are bonding with one another. You are talking to one another. You are enjoying each other's company, and a lot of times people can make the dinner time really tense, and that really doesn't build a real healthy bond, for your family during that time. Now, there are moments where things get heated. Sometimes it happens with a family. There's no family that's perfect. People get frustrated when you live in one space with multiple people there. You're going to get frustrated. Someone's going to get on somebody's nerves. It's going to happen. But learning how to do that and work together as a family, prepping the meal together as a family, cleaning up. And even if you're eating McDonald's in the family room floor, you don't have to have anything elaborate. But spending 30 minutes together, having a meal, and being present with one another is incredible.
I'm really loving the conversation. I'm glad we had this
Me
conversation. We're not
too.
done. I do have 2 more questions. One of them segues into another question. Um, as parents, they always talk about there's no handbook for being a parent. You created a manual, but do you encounter parents who feel that they need to have all the answers?
I encounter parents that think that they don't need any help, that it's so kind of yes and no, the opposite. Like, I think parents sometimes think if I come to a parenting session or I buy a parenting book, that is showing the world that I'm not doing a good job as a parent, when actually it's the opposite. If you are diving into any topic to learn more about it, you're trying to become skilled in that topic, right? In your job, you get a new product that you're having to sell. You have to learn everything about the product. You read everything about it, right? You're buying a new car. You're going to read everything about it. You're going to do the consumer reports. You're going to look at people's reviews of the car. Why would you not do that with raising your children? And so I kind of have the opposite, to where people sometimes are more resistant to talking about it. And one thing that I've learned the most from me is that one person doesn't have all of the answers, but collectively together we can support one another and share ideas. And that really is helpful for parents.
I'm glad you said that, because even like it's about like working on the process. And I find myself even in my career at this point, I'm going into spaces and places and doing activities and going to workshops where I know a lot of the material, but what I'm looking for now is that just to walk out of there with at least one new thing and one more tool in my box, or to be able to share one tool from my toolbox.
Yeah.
And I think that's important with parenting. Do you think?
Yes, I do. And I think a refresher. Sometimes that refresher, like when you go to a training because you've been in your job for a long time, you're like, I forgot about that. I learned that about 5 years ago. I think I'm going to implement that at the next staff meeting. That was a good one. Those are things that, come back around to you and you're like, oh yeah, that was a good idea. I need to learn how to do that. So yeah.
That's why I love the summits. It's like, oh, okay, I forgot about that. Oh, that's new. Like, I brought up like 3 things from the summit in these conversations, and like Tina, I think did it almost 2 years ago. The summit.
Yes.
And I still remember the restful reset, and I actually used it today. So I have to tell Tina, I'm gonna message her, let her know I did that. So in your book, you have so many chapters and things going on here. You talk about life commitments. You talk about forming connections. You talk about routines. You talk about behaviors. We already talked about anxiety, depression, practice and discipline, education. And you also talk about that transition and going to school, the beginning of school. And I love how you laid it out from like different chapters of the child's life, like elementary school, middle school, high school, so far and so forth. You talk about what's next in the back of the book, and it has questions in it, because it's kind of unique to have like a parenting book that has all this together, and it goes by the chapter and it puts the stuff together, and it has, so what's next? If those people can see, it says, so what's next? What is next for you around this book, or period?
Yeah. So basically what's next with this book is I go into schools, I talk to PTOs, PTAs, groups, things like that about this book. People get it for their book clubs. They do, book clubs with there's questions in the back for you to dive into for each chapter. I think there's 6 questions. So that's next. I also have my parent to parent sessions, where we get together collectively and kind of do a book study on this book, which is really fun to talk about our parenting skills and strategies, the things that we do for that. I also have, and I just connected this on the LinkedIn chat, the parent to parent YouTube channel that I just recently started. So if you would follow that, I would love that. Trying to get that out into the more viewers, so that we can get this content out to more parents. But I've been going through and reading sections of this book and releasing it, and also releasing different tips, as well as on Monday evenings, I host a special guest, an expert in the field of parenting, and they talk about a variety of different parenting topics. I've got some therapists that are coming. I've got people who are children's literature authors. So check out that parent to parent channel. So that one is really going to grow and evolve. And then, I always say that this book is the tip of the iceberg. This book is the springboard for conversations. And so there'll be more parent information coming soon. Just needing to get time to write it down. I've been grabbing some notes from different conversations. And so already filling up that next notebook that becomes the next book. So we'll be doing more with that soon.
That's a lot of what's next coming on.
Yeah.
Felipe's this week, right?
Yes. So Felipe on tomorrow, and then Dr. Sheila Thomas the next week.
Oh, that's a good group.
I know. And then I've got Jackie Hallberg coming in December. So yeah, we are already filled through December. Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
And Felipe just wrote his children's book. So it is a good opportunity to see him tomorrow. And I think he has a Spanish version too, if I'm not correct.
Oh, I'll find out tomorrow.
Maybe. That's a question people can ask also. And Dr. Sheila Thomas, she has a great YouTube page going on, and she also has written a parenting book, a child parenting book based on her own child who's an adult. And it's actually cool and they're real quick reads. Mm-hmm. So, it's a good opportunity to actually get those. And Jackie as well is always great. Her kid is doing a lot in nonprofit and helping the community. And, those are three good back to back people that you can see. So we had this conversation, we thought about it, we spoke, and we also, at the end, we also always want to end with a closing quote. So, Dr. Farron, I would like you to do a closing quote, but it can only come from your book.
Oh, I love that one. I already know which
one.
Hold on. I got to find where it is. I know which one I want to read, and I'm going to get it wrong. Here it is. I found it. It's from chapter 1. So chapter 1 is about lifetime. Parenting is a lifetime commitment. I see children as kites. You spend a lifetime trying to get them off the ground. You run them until you're both breathless. They crash. You add a longer tail. You patch and comfort, adjust and teach. You watch them lifted by the wind and assure them that someday they will fly. That is from one of my favorite authors, Erma Bombeck. And I really think that just holds the thought and meaning behind being a parent, right? We're guiding them. We're trying to get them to fly out of the nest. So yeah.
All right.
How about you?
I like that. Well, I have the book and you sent it to me, and the thing that sticks out to me is there's pieces in the chapter, but the biggest thing is the vision. The vision is that you're trying to build a parenting village. Mm-hmm. For parents. I am. Through parent to parenting and parenting in the trenches, mm-hmm. and having these conversations with different parents. You're building a village of individuals who don't all have the answers, but there's a lot of people who have a lot of answers to solve a lot of problems. Yeah. So I want to focus on that parenting village. And those people out there, do yourself a favor. Respond in the comments, but reach out to Dr. Farron and become a part of her parenting village.
Yes.
You can connect with and also have. And come on and don't be afraid to come on and say, hey, I want to come on to Dr. Farron's parent to parent and parent in the trenches, and having these conversations about my experience of being a parent. Someone wants to hear the story, someone needs to hear the story. And the village only starts with people who want to come into the village. So with that said, thank you all. And we'll be back next week.
Thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you for attending the 2350 Effect. If you are interested in becoming a guest or a sponsor, please contact Damien or Dr. Tanya. Join us every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the 2350 Effect.